Ole Miss delivers, and the Rebs win, of course, their first college football playoff game ever. And in terms of the game itself, Ole Miss and Georgia deliver finally because we had a bad series of college football playoff games. So it's a very strange and interesting line of narratives as we move into the semifinals here. Although the games were generally awful, the narratives are interesting. So the game's not interesting. The narrative's interesting. Appreciate you being here at the Voice of College Football. And we've got a semifinal lineup of Ole Miss taking on Miami. Who would have thunk? And then we also have a semifinal of Indiana and Oregon, and all Big Ten semifinal there guarantees that a Big Ten team will reach the college football playoff championship game. Please like the video and subscribe right here at the Voice of College Football. The link is in the chat. Give me a call. Let's discuss it. And again, please like and subscribe. The Amazon link's in the description section of this video and all the videos. When you shop on Amazon, please use the link that we provided to grow and build the channel. We would like to be doing this for quite some time in the future. And that would be one of the big keys in ensuring that we continue to do this. All right, folks, let's get right to it. I'm going to run down the scores and my initial thoughts, and then we will go right to the phone lines. So the abbreviated scoreboard looks something like this. Of course, game one at the Orange Bowl snooze fest as Oregon defeats Texas Tech 23-0. So we, in a sense, had two shutouts practically in this day of college football playoffs, and in a sport that is in no way competing with the NFL. It's difficult to do so when you've got crap games. So what's interesting here is we had some unpredictable games, at least unpredictable to many, but then they turned out to be lousy games, going all the way back to Miami upsetting Ohio State, and Ohio State, the biggest favorite of the weekend, certainly didn't show up, and Miami was a much better football team on Wednesday night, New Year's Eve, 24-14, although the Buckeyes closed it to 17-14. Too many mistakes, not good enough pass protection of Julian Sayin, and Miami just the dominant team and won the game 24-14. There we see again, Oregon shuts out Texas Tech. So this is the class of the Big 12, cannot score a point against an Oregon football team that is strong defensively, certainly fast and athletic, but giving up plenty of points to teams like James Madison and other teams in the Big Ten. This Indiana destruction of Alabama, 38-3. No score in the first quarter. They put up 17. And again, when I sized this game up, this was the one game, Indiana, Alabama, from just a pure statistical matchup. As we posted the video, ran down the national rankings, put them into context. And then also, again, I watch these teams play a ton of games. So it's not like I'm just running down statistics and just trying to mash these teams up statistically with no context. No, there's a lot of eyeball tests put into that. I kept trying to tell myself that Alabama has to be able to compete with Indiana, right? Like that seems so unimaginable to even make that statement prior to what we've seen in the last 3 months, that how can they possibly compete with Indiana? Like I couldn't, my brain could not properly wrestle with that and come out with a reasonable conclusion that Alabama couldn't compete with Indiana. But as I went through the statistical rankings, and especially since Alabama cannot run the football, and they have a quarterback who can't run. When you cannot run, when your quarterback cannot provide your running game, and your traditional running back position cannot provide, along with the offensive line, a running game, I just looked at this and I thought, Indiana will win this game. And as I predicted on Patreon, appreciate everyone who joins my predictions there, Indiana would cover the spread. Now, did I pick Indiana to win by 5 touchdowns? No. I just thought, okay, I'm going to go with what my eyes have been telling me the entire season watching these two teams, and the stats are backing up, is that Indiana is a much better team than Alabama. And then finally we get Ole Miss defeating Georgia. I went with Kirby Smart. I went with, of course, Pete Golding. What a story. Would Lane Kiffin have guided Ole Miss to the semifinal? We'll never know. But the odds say we don't know. So great game tonight. Finally, the CFP delivers one of those, because last weekend we had none. Miami, Texas A&M was close, but it wasn't really a great game. So we finally get a good game. And what's kind of strange in all of this is that with this Ole Miss victory, we have teams in Ole Miss, Miami, Indiana. Out of the semifinal teams, we have 3 of the 4 who have never won a college football playoff game before this weekend, or in Miami's case, last weekend. But before this playoff, 3 of these schools had never won a playoff game, and the other one's not necessarily a perennial giant. Oregon last won a college football playoff game back in 2014, the first playoff. So we got 4 complete newcomers, basically. And then the teams that lost and to a certain extent got embarrassed this weekend, namely Ohio State, Alabama, Georgia. I counted up 7 national championships and 21 college football playoff wins during the CFP era. 3 complete nobodies, having done nothing, defeat the 3 giants who have 7 national championships and 21 wins. Maybe we're seeing a changing of the guard of some sort. I don't know. All right, let's get to the calls. We got David Greenshield stopping by. Dr. Buckeye.
Hello, Mark. How are you?
I'm good. How are you doing?
Well, I've been better. I will get to the Ohio State autopsy here in just a minute. I will say this. You're right. It was a very entertaining game today. Let me get to the first game of the day. I think you and Matt, me and Matt got together on this one. I thought the Texas Tech's offense was fairly limited. It showed up in this one. They had really bad turnovers that hurt them, but I knew they were just going to have a hard time scoring points in this one. And Oregon's defense is very underrated, by the way. So I just had a hard time seeing that they were going to be able to get to 20 points in this game. Actually, Mark, it seemed like the score could have even been worse. They stopped Oregon on a few 4th downs. And, Texas Tech's defense tried to keep them in the game as long as they could. But, let's be fair. With a limited Texas Tech offense, they were just going to have a hard time scoring points in this one. And I'm not surprised Oregon won. I thought it'd be a little bit more competitive.
Yeah, I picked Oregon to win. I was not surprised by them winning, but yeah, I thought that this was a very interesting matchup, intriguing matchup, and when Texas Tech would somewhat stay in the game. Can't say that I got great analysis on this one as I had it on, but right. With company, therefore didn't really, wasn't really taking in, what was going on the screen. So not that it would have been any kind of valuable time invested in this one. 23-0. So it was obviously not much of a game to watch.
Yeah, I just thought Matt's point was, Texas Tech probably had to get a couple of turnovers, maybe special teams, get some short fields to be able to get the points they needed to win this one. Because like you had said, their quarterback, their offense was pretty limited coming into this one. And I like this Oregon offense. Moore has looked pretty good for most part this season. Sadiq is a matchup nightmare at tight end. They can run the football, as you mentioned. I tell you what, credit to Dan Lanning for replacing a lot of talent off of last year's team. He lost his best wide receiver, running back, offensive line, D-line, quarterback. For them to be in the Final Four, kudos to him and his staff.
Agreed. And those are points that we made the other night because I think that Baron Morton's an average quarterback.
Yeah.
And that pretty much held true. I saw the one interception that he threw. Just he's a limited player. He's a good quarterback. He's a decent player, but we're talking about gunning for a national championship here. And Yeah, the Oregon ground game. See what they did in this one. Not much of anything. That's of course sack yardage included. So you take off 25. They ran for about 90 yards basically in this game, which against Texas Tech that had a top 2 or 3 rush defense, probably actually had the number 1 rush defense in the country coming into the game at like 65 yards per game. It's actually an okay effort. And obviously, once Oregon got this lead, they didn't necessarily need to um, do much offensively. And, Dante Moore,
Yeah.
uh, I'm super impressed with Dante Moore. And, look at how efficient he was in this game as he has been all season, 26 of 33.
Yeah.
And yeah, uh, I'm a believer in Dan Lanning. I'm a believer in what he's doing there.
Yeah.
And he sometimes hits me with some things that I don't necessarily think were the wisest, but that's all right. And yeah, Oregon, they prepare for a rematch with Indiana, and Indiana
Yeah.
just looks so incredibly solid. I don't know if you heard my run through on Alabama and Indiana, but it's just almost surreal to watch Alabama and Indiana on a football field
Right.
and understand that Indiana is going to beat a not a great Alabama team, but not one that's hit the dumpster, one that's made the college football playoff in the SEC championship game, and they're going to beat them by 35 points.
Yes.
And actually, most indicators going into the game, as I saw it, pointed to an Indiana win comfortably, not 35 points, but still, if I had difficulty shaking the supposed talent gap because it obviously doesn't exist.
Right.
But I'm looking through the Indiana box score today, and I'm seeing names of players that have played elsewhere, and it really underlines the great coaching effort by Kurt Signetti.
Yes.
That these players were not star players, were not great players or standout players or guys that were recruited and signed to huge programs, and that he can bring all these guys together. And obviously they have to have talent. You can't run a 4.8 and compete, but so there's talent there, but I don't know what the guy, what he's able to do that's just so otherworldly as a coach. He's pulling something off that we've never seen, I believe, in the history of college football.
Well, I'll say this last quick point on Texas Tech. By the way, whoever the financier at Texas Tech spent a lot of money on that defense might want to spend some money on that offense in the offseason as far as investment. To the Rose Bowl, you're absolutely right. To the flowers that should be given to Indiana, and I did a little bit of this after the Big Ten title game. What Kurt Signetti has done, there's been nothing short of amazing. By the way, in the offseason, next offseason or two, his OC and his DC are probably going to be very wanted along the coaching circuit because they've done a great job with offensive and defensive game planning over the course of the season. But this is a team that's been upgraded over the course of their offseason. They've upgraded at quarterback. They've upgraded in the trenches, Mark. They still have very solid skill players. Surratt's a really good receiver. Cooper's a very good receiver. As I mentioned, they got Hemby, the transfer running back from Maryland. So he's really done a very good job of working in the portal. Remember last year, it was the James Madison transfers that he brought in that kind of helped his roster. So, what's going to be interesting to see is if he can continue to sustain this, and will it help his recruiting, as time goes by. But yeah, I mean, going into this one, I had a lot of doubts about Alabama. Simpson towards the back half of the season has not played particularly well. They're not really good along the offensive line. They've not been able to run the football. I thought their only hope was that Simpson and those receivers had a hot hand and the passing game was really clicking in this one if they were going to have a shot. And Simpson, he got hurt, then got knocked out of the game, and then the game just totally unraveled from that point on. But I think Indiana is probably the most well-rounded team in the playoff. I think Oregon's a very close second, though. That's going to be an interesting rematch, by the way.
So yeah, Ty Simpson leaving the game obviously had an impact, as you would think. Although
Yeah.
there were some Alabama fans that would have told you mid-season that they would
Yes.
have rather have seen Austin Mack in the game than Ty Simpson. So
Interesting.
obviously, the lack of experience and not taking the first team reps. I'm in no way comparing or saying that there was no drop off in play when Ty Simpson left the game. Uh, but yeah, you make all valid points about Indiana,
Yes.
and in amongst some of those playmakers you talked about, you got Charlie Becker
Yep.
also caught a touchdown again after he made some big plays in the Big Ten championship game and down the stretch against Penn State. And man, just a suffocating defensive performance. And again, I go back with Alabama to you're probably not going to survive. I don't know anyone who's won a national championship without having a rushing attack from the running backs.
Yeah.
That doesn't have a near 1,000-yard running back. But if you're not going to have that, and I don't know what team this would be, maybe the Lamar Jackson, Louisville teams, but obviously they weren't anywhere close to winning national championships. But if you don't have that, you have to at least have a running quarterback that they've been able to survive kind of this season, and obviously look deplorable on offense at times, talking about Alabama. When all you can do is have a downfield passing attack,
Right.
at wide receiver and tight end, you just can't live off of that.
Right, exactly. And the better Alabama offenses we've seen in the past have had balance, Mark. And, DeBoer and Jed Fish in the offseason, are really going to have to look at that running game, offensive line. I'll get to offensive line here in about a minute. But, yeah, I mean, they're really going to have to look at upgrading in those areas and, getting better, as far as a rushing attack going forward. Because I think Simpson will come back for them next year. So we'll see if he shows how much growth he shows next year at quarterback too. But yeah, Indiana just seems like a really well-rounded team, well-rounded, well-coached, and it's going to be a real interesting matchup with Oregon in that semifinal. I'm interested to see how that defensive game plan looks when they attack, more again, when they meet again, by the way, because they really shut down that Oregon offense in the second half. So
yeah, I was about to say this.
All right,
Much the same
on
thing.
to what happened. Go ahead.
Go ahead, David. Go ahead.
Good. Sorry, Mark.
Go ahead. I think
No,
we
I was
got
just
a
going to
lag
say they
here.
really shut down more than. No, that's okay. I think they really shut down more in that second half, though. It's going to be interesting to see what Oregon looks like the second time around. Sorry.
Anything else, David?
No, I just wanted to say for tonight, just a couple quick comments on tonight, by the way, before I get to Ohio State real quick. I did think that if you'd have told me Georgia was going to score north of 30, I would have really liked their chances. But Chambliss put on a show. I will say that. And, really good quarterback. And Wallace, that receiver, was really uncoverable. Some interesting coaching decisions by Kirby Smart tonight. I thought the 4th and 2 in the fourth quarter at 27-24 was a stretch, Mark. Do you have a thought on that?
Oh, my good yeah, he was the riverboat gambler to the max. It was a bit foolhardy what Kirby Smart was doing tonight. So there were the 2 fourth down plays in his own end, right around the 28 or 30-yard line. Now, when they work, he looks like a genius. They go for it. I think the first one was like 4th and 2, and he runs that little end around flip back, a flea flicker of sorts, with the, it's basically a double reverse flip is what it is. And then the, they get the exciting pass downfield by I'm trying to think of the player that they highlight all the time in these Georgia games, because unfortunately, he's a brother that's has some physical challenges, and they highlight, I think his last name's, anyway, I'm not going to try to, Lance, I can't remember his name. Anyway, so obviously he looks like a genius, but then he does the same thing. And I can't remember the play call on the 4th. I think they just ran more of a traditional drop back pass on 4th and 5.
They did.
And got sacked. But you're at your own 30-yard line
Right.
in a one-score game.
Yeah.
And Kirby Smart, I never, he's never been a ultra conservative coach like on the other end of the spectrum, but I don't know where this is coming from that I guess he just thought that his defense was incapable of getting a stop.
Yeah, I really also thought that at the end of that game, I had a feeling that Georgia had to win the game there once they moved the ball inside the 10-yard line. I knew when they gave Chambliss that much time, and then they manned up on those receivers, I'm like, somebody's going to beat somebody off the line of scrimmage and make a play. And sure enough, Wallace, their best receiver, did.
Let's understand something, David. How many conversations have we had about the lack of playmaking ability at Penn State?
Yeah.
And during that time, there's been one Trey Wallace playing at Penn State.
True.
So maybe something about coaching, maybe something about development, maybe something about scheme and ability to orchestrate a pass offense like they can at Ole Miss and apparently can't at Penn State.
Yeah, maybe some blame to Andy Colton-Nicky, the former offensive coordinator at Penn State, for not being able to do so.
Yep.
Okay, on to the autopsy from last night. We didn't get a chance to talk just briefly. Mark, you must have been at the New Year's Eve party or something last night. Matt was holding down the fort for you or something.
Yeah, I got to say, I have little analysis on Ohio State because I did not see the game and I saw like 3 plays.
Really, Mark?
Yeah.
Wow.
I had much better things to do. And as it proved out, I did have much better things to do.
You did have much better.
I told you that before the game that I had better things to do, but as it played out again, I had better things to do. Yes, then watch Ohio State look like garbage. Apparently look like garbage. This is all I know is that basically I threw my phone on like early second quarter and saw the numbers on the game. Like I threw the game on the actual game feed, and right at the time that they were running down the numbers, and I saw 0-0, but I saw Miami just dominating statistically. And then I saw the Tony touchdown 7-0. Yeah. And then I saw Jeremiah Smith make a big play downfield about 60 yards and thought, okay, maybe they'll get going. And then that was right before the Keontae Smith pick 6 to make it 14-0. And I did not see another play. I saw that Ohio State narrowed it to 17-14. Yeah. And I had some hope there, but then, yeah.
Well, a few things. First of all, I think the game planning, in as much as the poor offensive line play, was very, very hurtful coming into this one. I thought that they would come out with a better offensive game plan than they did, especially with 25 days. They did not. They didn't do a really good enough job, and the offensive line didn't play well. I think they had a tackle playing hurt. They had another tackle that seems like his feet were in cement. They had to replace their guard position again, their right guard position again. It wasn't good, but they could have done some things to kind of mitigate that a little bit, maybe help their tackles. I thought they could have put a little bit more emphasis on the run and screen game. They didn't do that. Julian Sain had some misses in the first half. Right before, the pick 6, there was a tight end running down the field. The pass rush was there, but he missed him. There's a screenshot of the play out there and that was a huge swing right there because it could have gone from a play where you could have gotten a touchdown. He missed the throw. And then you throw a pick 6. Kudos to Miami. They need to be given their flowers. Their D-line dominated. I think the key stat in this game would be they ran the ball well and they pass protected, and we did not pass protect. Their offensive tackles held up against their our edge rushers. Ours didn't. And Carson Beck had a Carson Beck kind of night. He threw a lot of short passes. They ran the ball a little bit better. It was not the best effort by the defense, but the bottom line's the bottom line. The defense only gave up 17 offensive points to Miami. And they still gave Ohio State a chance to have the ball in the fourth quarter with a chance to win. And you know what? Again, the defensive line came through for Miami. I thought there was a debatable holding call at the end of the game, but they called it, and Ohio State was forced to punt. They couldn't stop the run at the end of the game. And you know what? I think some of Julian Sain's growing pains showed up in the first half. He played a much, much better second half. And, Ohio State had its chance. As poorly as they played in the first half, they had their chance with the ball in the fourth quarter. But, when you can't pass protect and you can't get to the quarterback and you have issues stopping the run, you're going to lose. And you know what? This is what showed why Miami was a tougher matchup for Ohio State, because their offensive line could pass pro and their defensive line was able to get after the quarterback. And I told you early in the year, Miami, I thought Miami was a dangerous team. Remember, we talked about Miami being a dangerous team earlier in the year, Mark.
Yeah. So I picked Ohio State to win the game.
Yep.
And everything that seems reasonable pointed to Ohio State being Ohio State and being the best team in the country, or one of the top three, let's say, and Miami being a rung below. Even to the point where our guy Cam Underwood on our Wednesday Miami show lives and breathes and lives and dies Miami football, had to pick Ohio State to win. Again, they're not the better team because they lost the game. Miami's the better team, but going into the game, better team, better in every statistical phase against a better schedule. Yep. I know Miami had a better opponent at the top, but a much better schedule, played better, just a deeper roster, more talented roster, all those things. And so my head told me Ohio State's going to win this game. My heart, of course, said Ohio State's going to win this game. Mm-hmm. My gut, though, did not feel good about this game because of what you just stated about the play on the line of scrimmage on both sides of the ball. Yeah. That I saw, this is an excellent Ohio State defensive front, but being stalemated probably by an excellent offensive line at Miami that's a top 5 offensive line in the country versus a good, decent Ohio State offensive line against a devastating Miami defensive front. And I did not like that at all, even though Julian Sain's proven himself. And if he can go to Ann Arbor in the inclement weather and throw a pick early and rally to play a really strong game and all those things, and the adage about not being a freshman, and of course he's a redshirt freshman, but not being a freshman at the end of the season like you were at the beginning and all those things. Carson Beck had an experience factor on him, and I do agree, based on what I heard, that Julian's saying, he for a third consecutive game, it took him a while to get into the game and to get comfortable.
That's right. That's absolutely right. He got off to a rocky start. He rebounded with, I think, he played better in the second half. And they finally made some adjustments. They ran some gap scheme, ran the ball on that first drive to get back into the game at 14-7. And, they made some adjustments, but it was too little too late. And the coaching staff deserves the blame for that. Because, there's still some things, even with that ferocious pass rush, that you can do to mitigate that a little bit. And they did not make those adjustments, and they did not come prepared for that. And, a D-line can wreck your game. Go ask the 07 Patriots why they didn't go undefeated. Strahan, Umanura, and Tuck wrecked Tom Brady in that game and got after him awfully fierce. So, a really good, and we've seen it at Ohio State before, really good D-lines have caused us a lot of problems. Florida State 98, I remember that, in that Sugar Bowl. And then obviously everybody remembers 06 against Florida, Mark. Those edge guys get after you.
Absolutely. So,
all right. Well, an interesting playoff. It's good to see you back, my friend. We'll continue to talk college football as these playoffs move along. And good to see you, Mark. Wish it was under better circumstances. But
I know it. Appreciate you being here.
Take care.
Thank you. Good to hear from David, even after a Buckeye loss. And so Ohio State goes down. The Big Ten still has 2. And I will address something very briefly. So I get all sorts of comments here in the last, 3 days, and even beyond that, about the Big Ten being the best conference, and that I've said the SEC is the best conference, and I didn't know what I was talking about, or however people phrased it. And really, truly, those people don't know what they're talking about because they don't listen. Okay. Point being, number one, the SEC played much better than the Big Ten during non-conference play. That's not debatable. It's not close. The SEC played better. So what was my consistent point in that? Not that the SEC was a better conference for sure. I never freaking said that once. So any moron that continues to, if there's anything that drives me nuts here, it's when people tell me things that I said that I didn't say. So that was never a statement that I made that the SEC was a better conference. I said, based on the games that were played, the SEC is a better conference. We will continue to evaluate. So we're going into a postseason where we got a bunch of bowl games that we have to kind of figure out and kind of weed through in terms of what do they really mean because of opt-outs. But bottom line is I'm going to weigh bowl games, i.e. Texas, Michigan, Illinois, Tennessee, Iowa, Vanderbilt, pretty much based on the result of the game. And sure, I'll look into opt-outs and give some consideration there. But basically, hey, the winner and how well it was played, and most of those were close games, although Iowa was pretty dominant in its win for sure. And then we got to get to a place where at the time we had Georgia and Alabama still alive and we still had Ohio State alive. We're going to see 3 versus 3, possibly 3 teams versus 3 teams, meaning from each conference, face off in the most important games in the semifinals. And as we did at the Rose Bowl today. And then I will draw a conclusion and rank all the conferences, not just the Big Ten and the SEC, but I will rank all the conferences. And I believe I will do it as accurately as anybody out there. So I don't know why people, again, this is just common in social media and on YouTube, is that people don't listen. So either they're not real bright or they're just trolling just to troll and they actually know what the facts are and the truth are and what I stated, or, you know, they just stopped in for like 30 seconds and heard something and then ran with it. So again, we will rank the conferences as fairly and accurately and exhaustively as anyone when the time comes. And it looks really good for the Big Ten right now. All right, we got the real MVP here. To real, what's going on?
Nothing much, Mark. You know why people are hating the SEC is because they ain't us. And when you have been second place for so long and one conference struggles, even minutely, you're going to take advantage of it. Similar in how in politics, when the other side slips up, you're going to pounce on that mistake or that accident or incident for 24/7. That's all the Big Ten fans are doing. They don't. I don't know if they actually believe any of the stuff they're saying or what, but it's pretty evident to me that the SEC could win literally every game played to here until the end of time, and there are just some people who would say the Big Ten's better. But, Mark, there is some actual in-depth stuff we can take away from this college football playoff that nobody's talking about because the Big Ten SEC debate, and I just want to cut through that. First off, we got to do something with the buys because it's pretty evident at this point having the bye is a disadvantage. I wasn't a believer in this last year, but Ohio State, Georgia played easily the worst game of the entire season to start off, and that's just unacceptable. And for Georgia, they haven't played in an entire month, basically. Like, we got to do something to fix this.
Yeah, so both teams played the conference championship games on whatever date that was, like December 3rd, December 4th, and here they are
December
playing.
6th.
Okay, December 6th. So basically, yeah, it's like 27, 28 days later. I would agree. So last year, people made a big deal about it, but obviously you're talking Boise State, you're talking Arizona State, you're talking Oregon matching up against Ohio State that proved to be the best team in the field. So yeah, that didn't necessarily.
Right, all the buys teams were underdogs last year.
Yeah, exactly. Georgia playing with a backup quarterback, being a slight underdog. Exactly. So I didn't put much stock in it, but then we roll ahead to this year, and yeah, I think there's a point to be made there. And if we go to 16, I was leaning at one point to just making the point that at 16 it doesn't give any incentive of anyone really having an excellent season besides playing at home. That they're, for as much as I'm definitely or outside the NFL against buys because of the way college football is set up and the disparity of talent and all that, and not enough scores to correctly, accurately rank the teams that maybe there should be buys because there needs to be reward for having excellent seasons. But now I'm thinking you go to 16 and you let everybody play the same number of games to get to a national championship.
Right, because I mean, you even hear it with the NFL players. Sometimes they talk about how you get into a rhythm to start off the season, then you get an early bye, and that just really struggles you. And these are professional. You know, the NFL is the elite of the elite professional athletes. But now it's just for college kids not playing an entire month. You would expect them to lose some of that muster, some of that rhythm that you would gain. And that's why I think Indiana's win is even more impressive than what they've done. I think, Mark, this playoff is going to go one of two ways for the remaining of it. And that is Indiana is going to destroy literally anybody that is in their path. And I mean, we're talking like 21, 24-point wins, or this thing is completely wide open. I don't know which direction we're going with it, but Indiana, Mark, if they were Ohio State, Georgia, or Alabama, we would all be calling this thing a wrap. The only reason we're not is because they're Indiana. I don't know who is going to win the national championship, but I know who the best team in college football is, and that's the Indiana Hoosiers. And I think it's honestly undebatable that they're the best team in college football.
I would agree. I cannot argue with that. Now, of course, I want to see them play 2 more games against quality opponents because then that's going to complete the evaluation. But based on the games that have been played, I got to say, a week ago, I was sitting here saying, well, I want to see Ohio State play them again. But now Ohio State has lost to a team that I think is a really good team, but they're not some all-time great team. And they lost to them by 10 points. And they did lose to Indiana, fair and square. But that being what it was versus seeing what Ohio State did last year against Oregon in a rematch, I was looking forward to seeing those two teams square off again. But Ohio State was obviously not up to the challenge. So Indiana was. And for as flawed as Bama is, I don't see anybody else beating them 38-3. Yeah, it is crazy. And if you heard right at the beginning of the show, I was just saying, running through the stats and the video I posted running through Alabama and their national rankings versus Indiana's stats, it looked like it should be a blowout. And then also understanding that Alabama has no running game from its running backs, and they got a quarterback who can't run. That is just a recipe for disaster, being that one-dimensional. And then on top of that, just seeing both teams play 5, 6, 7 games this year, that it really hasn't been that close, but something in my brain just couldn't let me, or the repetition of years and years and years of Alabama being what it is and Indiana being what it is just couldn't lead me to believe that Indiana was that much better than Alabama. But lo and behold, they are.
Absolutely. And credit to Kirk Cincinnati. He's the best coach in college football.
Yeah,
I don't care what Kirby Smart, Ryan Day, or anybody else does. He can lose the next game by 100 points. He's the best coach in college football.
Yeah.
I don't want to have any discussion.
Yeah, I would agree, and I don't think it's a discussion. You cannot. Those other guys were given great programs with all the resources in the world and the 5-star rosters, and he was not. And he turned it around. He turned that thing from disaster to respectability immediately, and then just completely raised it when everyone just thought, okay, pat on the back, great job. Maybe Indiana's going to go 8-4 every year because this guy's really that good. No, he's really that good that he just turned a dumpster fire into the best football program in the country. Now, when I say program, I typically mean like a sustained, infrastructure that continues. So that kind of remains to be seen, but it is 2 years in a row and of dominant fashion this year. And and I think we were in the same place with Indiana football last year, being a great story, much improved, but that team is nowhere close to what this team is. And it's just,
Mark, we're
I
looking
can't
at
point to anything
potentially
else, but it's him.
right. We're looking at potentially Clemson from the 2016 to 2020 era, where you have a team that's unexpected. You know, Clemson was a decent team, and Indiana's where it's worse than them, but they can legitimately compete for like half a decade to a decade of best program in America with your sustained powerhouses. That's
Yes.
what we're looking at, is
Yeah.
what they could be. I think they will fall off eventually because they're Indiana, and I just have to see it for a very long period of time to keep them on the level of Georgia, Bama, and Ohio State. But if you told me Indiana won 2 of the next 5 titles, it honestly wouldn't surprise me. And it's a crazy statement to say, but with what they're doing there, I mean, the backup look as good as the starter against Alabama. And Alabama had NFL players as their backups. So I think they're going to be around for a while. And I think the Big Ten had another very high level quality team in here. But I guess, Mark, we do need to go to the big thing, and that is literally everyone, basically, is talking about the downfall of the great SEC, Mark. You know, the SEC, I guess, should just forfeit, should give up. Ole Miss shouldn't show up against Ole Miss, even though they're 3.5-point favorites. Mark, do you know what recency bias is?
Yes, I'm familiar with the term. Yes.
With how much people value bowl games and these late conference games, do you think it would just be better for the sport if we just weighted these games officially and properly? Because it seems like any of the games that happened in week 1, 2, or 3 don't even matter at all.
No, they don't. And so are you talking about in actuality they don't count, or in our perception we write them off as not counting?
Well, based on what I'm seeing from literally everybody, like you could say Texas A&M beating Notre Dame, I guess just didn't happen this season. So, you know, if people want to go that route to where these high level matchups don't matter, then we should just weight the games properly to reflect how much a team improves or something like that.
Well,
because people are clearly incapable of looking over the full context of a season and determining who's good and who isn't.
Well, what I generally hear out of people is that it's not even a consistent argument, because they will write off week 1 and week 2, and then in the same argument concerning a collection of teams competing for the playoff, they'll then say, for example, Texas lost to Florida, and that was horrendous. And that was, 5 or 6 weeks into the season. So I don't know where magically the season starts. I don't know what date that is. That we finally start to count these games.
Well, it's none of the non-conference games. I know that for sure. So I guess we just need to, in order to make people happy, is just get rid of all these non-conference games, these high-level games. They don't matter anyway, as Texas, Ohio State showed this year. Cut the season to like 8 weeks, have a 32, 16-team playoff, and just let it ride out. Because that's what it seems like people want, Mark. I mean, if you look at it, what did Georgia accomplish this season? How many people in 2 years is going to even remember that they won the SEC championship?
Just the nerds like me.
Exactly.
Yeah, I mean, we are playing the NCAA men's basketball tournament now. That's what people care about.
Right. And to me, the essence of the sport is already destroyed. So we might as well just go to 32, Mark. We might as well just fully accept it, go to 32 teams, have all these bowl games be playoff games, and just get it over with. Because nobody clearly cares about the regular season. Nobody cares about these high-level matchups. So we might as well, since these bowl games really don't matter, we have the first 3 or 4 rounds as home games and then move on. Because look at your Ohio State Buckeyes as a perfect example. They were one of the 2 best teams the entire year. They're going to be remembered as complete failures who did nothing. Do you think that's how your team should be remembered this year for all they accomplished?
Well, I think that's the way, social media types out there in terms of just the typical trolling fans whether they're pessimistic Ohio State fans or they're fans of other fan bases, I tend to look at it more from the standpoint of it's difficult to achieve things in this world and in life when there are very competitive circumstances. So I would like to think that their season was not a failure, but by their standards, it's a failure. But yeah, it doesn't matter how many games. It's the 32-3 college basketball team that loses in the second round of the NCAA tournament.
What about Texas Tech? Because I thought they had a good season. I think if we had a 14 playoff, they would have made a 14 playoff. And I think making a 14 playoff is something Texas Tech fans would have bragged about. Now you see Big 12 people talking about how their loss in embarrassing fashion could permanently damage the conference going forward. Is that healthy for the sport?
It's not healthy to build a narrative based on one football game. And I know that the Big 12 has not been able to compete in these games for a long, long time for the most part. We were corrected the other night to we forgot about TCU's win against Michigan in the playoffs. So the Big 12 now stands, I believe, at 1-8. Not good for the sport. No, not good for the sport.
Yeah, and that's all, because anybody who says, in my opinion, just to tie this all back together, that the Big Ten is the best conference, what they're really saying, Mark, is I value the college football playoff so much, I am willing to eliminate 95% of games and only focus on these very few sample size that matters. Now, how's the bowl games and the playoff games shown that the Big Ten is better in these select 5% of games? Yes, the Big Ten has absolutely dominated bowl season. If you look at the entire course of the thing, it is a real argument between who's better between the SEC and Big Ten. And if you say that anywhere, Mark, it's basically blasphemy. And to me, that's a sign the sport's in a very unhealthy place. So, I was against playoff expansion for this reason. It's just going down the tube, and it's going to go down the tube even quicker when we expand to probably 16 or even 24 like the Big Ten wants. But sorry for the Big 12, because I know nobody cares about them. They're the biggest loser in all of this. They could have a team go 13-0, Mark, and nobody's going to believe in them. And that's sad. Because they're going to be judged on past performances. So, thanks for them. But in the regular season, don't matter anymore.
Yeah, this is the only sport where legacies are passed down from season to season in regards to the evaluation of these teams and the conferences. College basketball doesn't deal with that. They go by metrics. It's a very metric-driven selection process. And obviously, the professional sports leagues don't have to be concerned with any of that because the wins and losses tell everything.
Right, and that's
very legacy-driven sport.
Right, and that's why I've been arguing for metrics and how we should have a quad system, a net ranking, and all that stuff going forth. Mark, I do think before I go, because I know we got plenty of other callers, there was a few super chats, believe it or not, to me, like talking about me. So if I could respond to those. Let's
get in here. All right. I'm going to run through all of them, so we'll get to yours. King Vegeta 9. We've got the SEC best bowl wins are the Texas win and the 2 wins versus SEC teams. Can we now end the SEC as the best conference? We will have that discussion. At least my personal rankings will come out after all the games are played.
Right, Mark. Who's better between Notre Dame and Alabama? Is it close?
Yeah, it's close.
So how come that Texas A&M Notre Dame game just isn't a factor for this person, you think?
He's looking at what do we have here? Best bowl wins. He's looking at these bowl wins.
Exactly. Yeah. This is the problem when you only got a postseason sport. Well, I hope everyone realizes your Texas-Ohio State matchups, your Alabama-Ohio State, all those non-conference games going to go away in the next few years. All those rivalry non-conference matchups you all wanted, oh, they're all gone. So,
well, when it comes to bowl games and evaluation of the bowl games, I just hope that people out there that make comments about the bowl games one way or the other, just so you're being genuine and consistent, because I hear the same people that trash bowl games as being invalid and meaningless, on the other hand, then capitalize when it makes their team and their conference look good. So let's just be consistent. And consistent for me means counting them, but also looking over the matchups and the opt-outs, and at least noting that, giving notation to, I saw a list of like 12 Texas players. Now they ended up winning the game anyway, but I saw like 12 Texas players versus like 3 Michigan players that opted out of that game yesterday, but Texas was still able to win. So if Michigan had won the game, credit Michigan. They won the game. They beat a good football team, a talented team, but they would have beaten a team minus 12 players.
well, you know, Mark, nuance isn't really in high demand in this society anymore. You aren't able to make a nuance point, and this super chat actually goes to it.
All right. We've got Khalid. Appreciate you being here. Thank you for the super chat. The real MVP went to bed last night with Bama, Georgia in the Natty, and 0 Big Ten teams in the semis. Who changed the script? I know it was not ESPN.
Yeah, so this, Mark, is when the case of somebody wants to, you know how I'm sure you've done this before. You think somebody hears what they want to hear instead of what you actually said. Has that ever happened to you before on here?
Oh, my goodness. Happens all the time.
Okay, so what I said,
yes, go ahead.
and what I will reiterate is after Ohio State got beaten soundly by Miami, there was a theory I had that the top of the Big Ten may not have been elite. And maybe they were just beating up on the middle Big Ten teams because they were that bad. Now, it turns out that wasn't actually true. But we didn't know about Texas Tech, and we didn't know how good Indiana was because they, the middle of the Big Ten was bad. That was my theory of that could happen. So I said, man, Ohio State losing makes the path much more likely that the Big Ten would get 0 teams. And this is self-evidently true because the odds reflected that Miami was by far the biggest underdog. So if they win, therefore, it must be true that the Big Ten getting 0 teams is significantly more likely. And if that's true, then the odds of an Alabama-Georgia rematch is more likely than it was prior to the game. That's what I said.
I also know, and correct me if I'm wrong, because it's been a long time going back to, let's say, mid-season, from about mid-season on through the Big Ten championship game. I believe you said a number of times that you thought that Ohio State and Indiana, in some order, were probably the 2 best teams in the country, although you still believe the SEC to be the best conference.
Right. To me, the 3 teams that separated themselves, Indiana, Ohio State, Georgia. Those were the 3 best teams. I didn't know the order. I value the SEC as being the best conference because of their depth and quality of wins. Like example, Mississippi State being Arizona State. Do you remember that game? It was a 1-7 SEC team beating a 6-3 Big 12 team.
That was back in September, though.
Oh yeah, and also it didn't have an impact on the playoff race, So those games don't matter.
All right. Do we have anything directed toward you? I think, yeah, we got Khalid coming back with this one. The real MVP's new excuse for the SEC losing is the buys.
Now, Mark, I was here with you. Did I mention how the SEC was disproportionately negatively impacted by the buys?
No.
And also, how would that make any logical sense? Because who did Georgia lose to? What conference does Ole Miss play in?
Yes. All right. Well, we got other calls. Darrell, appreciate you being here.
Yeah, no problem. I guess I'll be shocked if Ole Miss even shows up to the game against Miami at this rate, based on what everyone's saying. So, time to hang the white flag, Mark, and see you in 2027. It's already over for the SEC, and the year just started.
All right. Yes, the conference debate rolls on. And again, we will have a whole lot of fun ranking these conferences at the end of the season. With all the games counting to some degree, but weighting the games and weighting the seeding of the games, that's also important. But yeah, the Big Ten looks great. The Big Ten is in tremendous shape with two teams. And of course, had the favorites all won, would have had three teams in the semifinals. So the Big Ten very close to dominance there, but in the CFP, but not to be, as Ohio State gets trampled. But the other two, Indiana and Oregon, blow out their opponents. And wow, Ole Miss showed me something tonight in that Trinidad Chambliss, because I didn't see Ole Miss winning this game. Thought Georgia would win. I watched the first game that the two teams played, and ever since, Georgia's been the better team and really on a roll. But Ole Miss against Miami, very interesting matchup there. And I'm a bit surprised to hear that Ole Miss is a 3.5-point favorite in that game. All right, we got Muley stopping by. Muley, what's going on tonight?
Hey, Mark. Been having a past couple days, just been pretty frustrating. I mean, this whole season, this whole season's been kind of frustrating. I mean, I've always been frustrated, because that's one of the reasons why I've been coming on this show for years, is because the debates that I have online. For one, no one can say anything without putting in insults in there, but also two, it doesn't matter how objective you are or whatever you say. If you say something that goes against what someone says, then you're biased, and then it doesn't help my profile icon is an elephant. I'm starting to understand why you hate mentioning the team that you follow, because apparently you can't be a fan of a team and be objective. But that's my gripes out of the way. Yeah, the SEC has not had a good postseason. I think anyone that can look at this can clearly say that, and it's not hard to say it. It's not hard to like say that, but the takes that we're going, it's getting to the point where it's going too far in the opposite direction, to where we're having like these in hindsight kind of takes and saying that, oh, these teams should not have been ranked at all during the season at any point, or these teams were frauds, they should have never made it, whatnot. I'll start with the teams that shouldn't have made it: Alabama and Oklahoma. We all know why Bama made it. A lot of people say it's because of ESPN, is for SEC. I think it's very clear that they wanted to protect the conference championship games, because Mark, if Alabama dropped out of the playoffs entirely, that would have caused a huge roar. And yet, no one seems to understand it. If anything, they're going from the SEC gets beneficial treatments, okay? And then at least I could understand the reason for putting Notre Dame over Bama, like it would being between Notre Dame and Bama. But what was what's making Oklahoma now frauds? Why is now all of a sudden that Oklahoma is just this bad team that shouldn't have made the playoffs?
Because people suffer from groupthink. So at some point in the season, of course, John Mateer got hurt. That severely limited Oklahoma's offense. They are a defensive-oriented team. People don't like defense. They say they like defense, but they apparently don't like defense, because anytime a team wins a game 10-7, they assume that they're a bad football team, regardless of how good the other team was that they defeated, rather than winning 48-45. There's typically not a whole lot of backlash for that type of victory in terms of defensive deficiencies. Just that was a great game. That was exciting. So people are drawn to offense and excitement, and therefore there's an obvious bias against defensive oriented teams. And we've seen it throughout the history of college football. A lot of defensive oriented teams that play a certain style of offense are underrated, underevaluated, and appreciated, whether that's Iowa consistently, whether that's the 2002 Ohio State team, the 2000 Oklahoma team, the 1992 Alabama team, the 1986 Penn State team. I'm citing teams that were huge underdogs in national championship games because they were boring and they weren't as good and all of that. But then their defense rose up and won national championships. So Oklahoma plays a style of football that people don't like, and they therefore term it as the favorite term out there, quote, garbage. And they might be surprised to see Oklahoma's passing stats the last few games of the season when Mateer finally did get healthy and threw for over 300 yards, for example, against LSU. But yeah, and then what happens is like one influential person or a small group of fairly influential people have that thought and are able to push that narrative. And if they're, especially if they're clever about it, most social media fights and debates are won. When I say won according to the morons that don't really understand football or facts, won by the person that's more clever in posting some kind of meme or something, rather than the person who's logical and understands the sport and brings facts. So that's what happens. And then everybody piles into this category and into this groupthink that, well, yeah, Oklahoma sucks because they can't score and they can't play offense. And I set up the Alabama game in terms of the statistical national rankings, and Oklahoma wasn't good offensively, but they were not any kind of horrible outlier by any stretch offensively, like people think that they are.
Yeah.
And just to add to that real quick, Muley,
Sorry.
I see so much, and I didn't mean to continue and interrupt you, but I may start a segment here every night where I don't have to look far. So when I say find, I don't mean I'm going to be out searching. They're in my face constantly of people who are not only either trolling intentionally just to drum up views and be really stupid, or they are stupid and not knowledgeable and very ignorant people that post things that sometimes are just incredibly illogical, or other times are just downright lies. And I don't know if they're that ignorant or they're intentionally printing lies. For example, I posted something the other day from a Miami Facebook group. Now, this had to be intentional. It just had to be. They had a statistical comparison of national rankings between Ohio State and Miami. And I gave that one quick glance and I realized that they were completely wrong. Like every national ranking they gave to an Ohio State team that ranks like number 1 or 2 in almost every defensive statistical category, they were just putting 30s and 35s next to their name just to do it. And just to have their other 400 Miami commenters chuckle and laugh and make stupid comments, thinking that they're actually looking at valid numbers when they're looking at just blatant lies. That's the kind of stuff that's out there.
There is, and let's be real, there's trolls in a decent amount for every team, any scenario, anywhere. Sure. But the fact that, and this has been happening for the past several years now, but the fact that you're getting like sports personalities, media members, whatever, to come and push these narratives, because all I hear all the time is the SEC media machine. It's the SEC media machine. When I see Nicole Auerbach make some dumb takes, I'm sorry to call her to say she's not. I'm not saying she's dumb, but Tim Brando, I see Danny Cannell make these ridiculous takes, and it's just like, it's clear that they're trying to push a narrative, and then that they're also using their platform and their influence to skew the perception.
Yeah. And I also think that there are just so many voices out there now. If we started to list what we think are influential college football people, there are people that pop up from time to time that I see that I have forgotten about, that I haven't heard anything from in 5 years, but they still have some kind of influence, but maybe not what they had when everybody just watched ESPN and that's all we knew. So I think the shock value is a big motivation in all of this, to say something to shock people.
Right, but it's getting to the point where when you see it so consistently pushed by these media members, and for coming on years on of tracking this, it's definitely coming to the point where they're trying to skew this perception. Someone said what narrative? The narrative that what I'm trying to point to is the narrative where, while yes, the SEC has had a bad season and it should penalize them, the fact that we're going so extreme into one direction by saying that this team, like what I mentioned with Oklahoma, like I said, there was a legitimate reason to leave Bama out, but Oklahoma, I think that was a pretty solid team that was in. Or that we're now acting like Missouri and Tennessee, which is another thing. I already mentioned this before, but I'll let you get your thoughts off first before I go into the Missouri and Tennessee thing. But yeah, I don't understand how those are now just suddenly awful teams.
So one thought I have here, I don't know if I'm taking us in a different direction, but it seems to be in the same type category, is so we got Khalid here. I just posted his comment. Mark, your rant about Miami after Louisville loss did not age well. It actually didn't not age well, nor did it age well. It had nothing to do with what Miami's achieved over the last, like, I didn't come on here after Miami lost to Louisville and say Miami's a horrible football team and they will accomplish nothing this season. That was not my point. My point was, I do a Wednesday show on Miami football. I've got a Miami football channel that's got about 10,000 subs. So we've got a decent collection of people over there. And these people talk about winning championships and doing things that program up until a couple of weeks ago proved completely incapable of doing for years and years and years and years, and never coming anywhere close to it. And I was simply making the point, win a game that matters first before you start talking about winning national championships. And so they have now done that. That has nothing to do with my evaluation of, I never made a, some type of nail in the coffin comment about Miami this year. Miami is basically, for anybody, and this also plagues me on all these channels, is when I used to do the USC show, USC fans said I hated them. Miami fans say I hate them. Florida State fans say I hate them, et cetera, because they want to hear that their program's the most amazing thing that's ever been created. And Miami's been horrible by its standards. They've not been horrible, but you know what I mean? They've not been championship caliber in forever, so they don't like to hear that. But I've actually consistently predicted Miami to finish with better records than they have. So I have consistently overrated Miami in the preseason compared to what they have accomplished.
I mean, I don't remember anything you said about the Miami game with Miami Louisville. I will just add to that is Louisville, after the Miami game, has dealt with a lot of injuries, to be fair. That is why they took some losses near the end too. They had a lot of injuries, but they are a pretty solid team in themselves. Okay, well, I'll just go my last thing about Missouri and Tennessee. So the thing I've seen so much lately, and I've say 20, 30, I mean, it's getting to the point where it's getting so ridiculous, where it's, I'm all about the talking points. If we're going to talk about something, but the problem is, sorry, I'm tripping on my words. Missouri and Tennessee, the main talking point is that they didn't beat a team with a winning record at all this season, which, yes, that is a fact. They didn't beat a team with a winning record. But it gets annoying when you consider, and then people act like they should never been ranked. But then I come back and say there were a lot of teams from that 20 to 30 range where they didn't really accomplish much either. And then it gets annoying because, if you, Mark, you understand when you go every week and rank the team, sometimes it's hard to say which team should be top 25. You're basically having to evaluate, and you've also made the point that there should not be a cutoff at 25. There's, what's the gap between the number 22 and the number 28 team? All to come and say, going back to the original point about the winning record is that right at the end of the regular season, Missouri and Tennessee, the teams that they played with winning records were all in the top 15, which were like Bama, Vandy, I think they played Georgia, A&M, and whatnot, and they played them close, right? Now, people are going to get mad and say, "Oh, that's the quality loss and stuff." I mean, I think there's still something to at least gauge there. I'm not saying to treat it as a win, but at least say, "Hey, they were able to compete." Fair. And then what happened was, right at the end of the season, I still saw people complaining about these two teams, even though they're not ranked. And now their narrative is that the real issue is that the fact that they were ranked at all during the season to prop up these other SEC teams is an issue, and that college football is corrupt. When that couldn't be anything more wrong with that, because let's take Iowa, for example. Iowa at the end of the season. Now, again, right now, obviously, after postseason play, Iowa separated themselves. I'm just laying that out. I'm just saying at the time of the final rankings, the Iowa teams that they beat with winning records was 7-5 Nebraska after Raiola got injured, and 7-5 Minnesota. And I also mentioned that Minnesota was 7-5 because they played more bad teams as a result. And I took the example of Auburn, because Missouri, they beat Auburn in overtime. And forget SEC versus Big Ten. Auburn played more teams in the top half of their conference than Minnesota. They played more quality teams than Minnesota. And as a result, they took a lot of losses. Now, part of it was execution. There were some schemes, but the talent was there. And when you look at the metrics, Auburn is like 20 to 30 spots higher than Minnesota. Like every system. I even went ahead and wrote down like Auburn, and then just to throw it in there, I wrote for like South Carolina, Mississippi State. And in a lot of them, Auburn was consistently a top 35 team. Auburn was actually close to Penn State, who a lot of people can agree Penn State just dropped a couple, just found ways to lose some really unusual games, right? So it was still a pretty good team. But anyways, my point is Minnesota played 3 ranked teams, and they got blown out in each of those games, whereas Auburn played 5 ranked teams, Missouri, and played all of them close. The only game that was more than double digits was the Georgia game, where honestly they should have been up 17-0. That was a bad call in itself. And then as a result, Auburn was they found ways to lose every game, but they played better competition on a consistent basis, better than Minnesota. And the metrics say that they're a better team. Yet, because Minnesota had a better record, I'm supposed to then look at this and say, because Iowa beat 7-5 Minnesota, that just makes them automatically better than these other teams.
Yeah. Point well taken. Anything else, Muley?
I guess I got people lost, so apologize for that. Basically, what I was trying to say is Auburn played more ranked teams and played close, whereas Minnesota got blown out by every ranked team they played. There's no reason to prop up a team like Iowa for beating Minnesota versus Missouri. Obviously, now that the bowl games have finished, it doesn't matter now. But at the time, people were complaining about it, and now they're going back and using this argument when circumstances and scheduling is the reason why they didn't play these teams. Like, we shouldn't act like Auburn's just any 5-7 for example. That's all I'm going to say.
All right, Muley. Appreciate you being here.
Thank you.
All right. I followed all that, but I think we got a bit into the weeds about we can go on and on with breaking down schedules and opponents and records and so forth and so on. The deal is that it all should be included. We shouldn't discount a team that went 8-5 in the case of Minnesota and a 5-7 Auburn team. So you start there, but then you delve deeper. So people say, should you go by the record or should you go by the metrics? Well, you should go by both. You should take all of it into consideration. All right. Just be consistent for one thing. And I see very little of that out there. Keith, how you doing tonight?
I'm doing good, Mark. Yeah, I got lost you're a better man than me. I was pretty lost through about half that.
I was a little too I'm just a nice guy, Keith. I should have and Muley's a great caller and usually has great points, and I think he had some great points in there. They were just should have been cut off like 25 minutes ago.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, but it's all fun. It's all good. Yeah. So do you remember my statement about Texas Tech? You have a lot of callers.
Okay.
Do you remember my statement about Texas Tech being included in the Final Four?
I do not. Remind me.
Remember I said I don't think the Big 12 champion really deserves one of the automatic bids. They're a
Oh, yes. Okay. Yes.
That any of the Big 10 teams could beat them by 18 to 19 points. And
any of them. You mean any in the playoff?
Any in the playoff. That's
Okay.
correct.
Yeah. Okay.
Any of the 3 Big 10 that made it. And I even made that statement that the SEC would be in double digits and Miami would be about 8 or 9 points, handle them by about 8 or 9 points.
Okay.
So, yeah. So
well, let's understand. All right. So based on the evidence of today's game, you're right, but that's one game. So based on the only evidence we have, you're right. However, let's understand that there were similar statements and comments being made about Arizona State last year, that they were going to get run and dragged all over the field and that they didn't deserve a playoff spot. And they took Texas to overtime and actually outplayed Texas and should have won the football game. And that was a 1-play difference between Texas and Arizona State. And Texas might have been the second best team in the country. So it's a one data point. And unfortunately, it's not the NBA. We don't get to see these teams play 7 times
right.
to truly get a read on it. But based on the one game today, yes, Oregon was much better than Texas Tech.
Yeah. And I also made a blanket statement that I think the 3 best teams in the playoffs were Indiana, Ohio State, and Oregon. And you said Georgia would have something to complain about that. And I said, yeah, except I just don't see Georgia's quarterback as a championship level quarterback. And so we were having that debate around the way too. And I was surprised by the Ohio State outcome against Miami. I didn't predict that by any means. So as good as I was about Texas Tech, I was not as good about Ohio State and Miami, and I wasn't good about Alabama. I did not predict, obviously, what Indiana did to Alabama, too. That was a pick'em game to me. I just was afraid Alabama would come out in their old form and just totally dominate Iowa, Indiana like it was 4 or 5 years ago. And so that was a pick'em game to me. But it was fun watching them for the last 2 days. I'm sorry you didn't get to see much of them.
Well, I saw Indiana play a lot this year, and we'll get to see even more. So I'll go back and watch the game. I don't know how much I'm going to sit through a 38-3 game, but yeah, Indiana, it's remarkable what they've achieved. I would like some type of historical comparison because I cannot make one. I think what Signetti is accomplishing has never been accomplished in college football.
Yeah, I gotta agree. I've never seen anybody go that low to that high.
Exactly. Maybe we could find somewhere in the 1920s where some team was 2-8, and then the next year they won the national championship. But again, they weren't playing multiple games against, top 5 to 10 competition in the country and all of that. And obviously, it was a much different era. But I can say that certainly during my lifetime, and even extending the prior decade or two before that, we have never seen anything like this. We have seen coaches take over the likes of Kansas State and Wake Forest and Oregon State and lift them from 2 and 3 win teams and do a remarkable job to make them very good, to make them 9 and 3 kind of teams, but not where they are arguably the best team in the country.
Yeah. And if you were going to keep records of trollers or liars,
Okay.
DeReal was one of those yesterday.
Okay.
DeReal, and I quote, said, Miami did a big favor for Georgia's cruise to the national title, because if Ohio State didn't have that much fight in them, then the other two Big Ten teams are likely to go down in the first round, and it's going to be a cruise to the championship for Georgia.
Okay. Well, DeReal's not here to defend his point or even state that that was accurate, so I have no idea.
Yeah.
So you're saying that DeReal was, of course, predicting Georgia to beat Ole Miss, and
Yes.
that after Miami beat Ohio State, he thought that Georgia would run right through them.
That's right.
And
Yeah.
keep going. Well,
Yeah.
that doesn't make him a troll or doesn't make him a liar. That just means he was wrong.
Yeah, but if he
different.
lied and said he did not put it that way. He said they could the Big Ten teams might not be all that good. But that didn't come off that way at all. He used the example that the Big Ten teams were gonna play poorly, like it sounded like Ohio State, and then Georgia would run through them. So it's
Right,
his
Keith.
statements.
I'm not gonna play arbiter to phone calls
Yeah,
back and forth.
yeah. So anyways, that would be good if you could get the show from yesterday, which you can. You can hear what he said, and then you get to show what he called today. It was spin at the very least.
All right.
But
Keith, seriously, do you expect me to go back and listen to last night's show? Really?
no,
No, I'm not.
no, I don't.
No, I understand I don't have the most exciting life known to man, but I do have better things to do.
Yeah, you had DeReal and I once together a year and a half ago, and we kind of went at it each other, and I think it was a good show that day. That you had a Big Ten guy and an SEC guy going at it.
I'm sure it was epic. All right, Keith. Anything else?
Just that I just wanted to make the point. I made this to Matt Zemet yesterday, and I wanted to let you know that I noticed this. This is what I see of your team, Ohio State, is that they have a problem. There's a flaw in the day coaching staff when they run up to very elite defensive line. And that explains the loss to Miami yesterday, Indiana in the championship game, in the last 4 years to Michigan.
Okay. I would say that you're correct. And I would also say that, that is something that they have struggled against more so than what they should. But I think that dominant defensive line play is one of the big keys in football.
Absolutely, as well as offensive line, right?
Sure.
Yep. So that's good. And playoffs are fun this year. Hopefully we get to see a little bit more as it goes along.
Absolutely. I think we've got let's see, Ole Miss and Miami and Oregon, Indiana. I don't expect blowouts from here on out, but we shall see.
Yeah, we didn't expect Indiana to blow out Alabama, though, did we?
Well, not like that. But as
Not
I
like
stated
that.
off the top, I looked at those two teams and saw a decided difference, and I did pick Indiana to cover the spread.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, like I said, to me it was a pick 'em. I wouldn't have picked one team over another because I always fear that Bama and Georgia could be the Bama and Georgia they were a few years ago.
All right, Keith.
All right,
Appreciate you being here.
Always good to talk to you, Mark.
Thanks a lot, Keith. All right, starting to drag a little bit. Let's pick it up here. We appreciate Keith. I'm not talking about Keith's call in particular. I'm talking about my inability to keep you guys moving with some points here. We got Trey stopping by. Trey, what's going on?
Hey, what's up, Mark?
Not too much.
Hope you had a good Christmas, and I hope you had a good New Year.
Excellent. Yes.
All right. So the first thing is I'll point out first, Alabama would not beat Notre Dame. Not the way they played. Now, I went on yesterday with Matt, and I told him about how Alabama needed to do certain things to beat Indiana, and they completely did not even do that.
Sure.
No running game. Todd Simpson, he looked like deer in headlights. The defense was nowhere to be found. They were back of the milk carton, for God's sake. And Indiana went right through them, and there was no problem. I had to turn that stuff off in the second quarter. It was atrocious.
Okay. So I certainly accept your opinion, but it is just that, an opinion that Alabama could in no way lose to Notre Dame.
Yeah, well, I never really liked Alabama this year. They look very inconsistent, and it really showed today.
Well, they can't run the ball.
Yeah, I told Matt yesterday, you got to be balanced. They can't put everything on Ty Simpson. I mean, you want to be a good playoff team and a national championship team, you got to have balance. And they don't have that. Oklahoma didn't have that either.
Yeah,
So
especially when the quarterback can't run.
Yeah, so Alabama, I'm not hating on them for their good season getting there, but I don't think they were ever going to be a championship contender this year. They were just a playoff team. It reminds me of the NFL and the wild card. It's going to be one and done, They remind me of that a little bit.
I'm with you. I would agree.
But the Oregon Texas Tech game, that was my favorite game. You talk about it, and I couldn't really give you an analysis on that because they were so similar. And what we learned here, Oregon might give Indiana a problem. And they did last time. They didn't completely dominate Oregon, but they did made enough plays and won the game. Texas Tech, they have an okay offense, but their defense is their offense, and their defense didn't really show up for Oregon, really. It was actually shocking. Jacob Rodriguez didn't make no plays like you'd think he would. Texas Tech did bail out their offense a little bit, but what can you do when your offense ain't moving the ball?
Yeah, so a few things about Oregon and Indiana and the first game they played at Austin Stadium. So what was impressive about that on the Indiana side was obviously they went into Austin Stadium. They were a touchdown underdog and won by 10. And Oregon did virtually nothing in the first half offensively. And Indiana didn't either. And Oregon finally scored largely due to a pretty bad pass interference call by the
Yeah, that's true.
officials. And then Indiana had a double-digit lead late in the game and got back within striking distance, actually with a pick six. Now that counts, but it was kind of a bad error by Fernando Mendoza that let Oregon back in the game. But if you just watched the pass rush and the trench play, the play in the trenches, Indiana was better.
Yeah, absolutely. And it'd be interesting with that rematch. But the biggest problem I got today was Ole Miss and Georgia. There's a lot to cover on that. Number one, what is Kirby thinking? I mean, I am really shocked about his fourth downs. I have never seen him go on fourth down so many
Well,
times
not
as he
at
did
its own
today.
29-yard line on 4th and 5.
Oh my Lord. That was a lot of fourth down plays. He did. More than when do you ever see Kirby Smart went for it multiple times in a game on fourth down? Man, I don't think I ever seen that out of Kirby. And yeah, they have a good defense, but come on, you can't give them the short field. You went for it on your own 25-yard line, 30, 25-yard line. You expect that was going to go good. Ole Miss had all the momentum, and you gave them more. So the second, and I thought about this for Georgia the whole year. You cannot be a second half team only. They're a great team. Georgia's been dominant a long time with Kirby, but this year and maybe last year, you can't just be a second half team. It's going to catch up to you someday, and they couldn't put it together again. And his fourth down calls were not helping nothing, and it just making it worse. And I'm just shocked. None of them really worked except for the punt, fake punt.
All right, Trey. Well, we need to move along. Anything else here?
Yeah, the referees in the Sugar Bowl is ridiculous. I'm not sure what they were thinking on that 1 second stuff. They should be ashamed. That was a complete embarrassment. A complete cluster. You know what?
Yes. Mismanaged.
What in the hell were they thinking? Just end the goddamn game. They're gonna get the ball back anyway. When you go to a damn safety, you're gonna give them the ball back. So that was complete idiocy. And also, Ole Miss on that end of the first half. What in the hell was he thinking? That was they need to run out of bounds to get that field goal. And I've never seen Judge really that mad on the sideline. He was not very pleased.
It did not cost them.
Yeah.
All right,
who
Trey.
knows? Could have. But
Appreciate
God bless everybody. Here. God bless everybody, and I'm glad everybody had a good holidays.
Thank you, man. Yeah, we're sitting at 1:30. I got to get up at 7. Yeah. So anyway, we will definitely not. We will definitely get to these final callers. We certainly want to respect everybody's time. And Mike and whoever else is there have been waiting. So we get a couple callers who have been waiting. Michael, what's going on tonight?
Not much, Mark. And yourself, Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
All right. I got to say this. I originally picked IU to win 28-20.
Okay.
But I was also saying, excuse me for my voice, I've been fighting a cold. If it gets 17-0 like it did against Oklahoma, game over. Sure enough, what happened? 17-0 with the IU-Alabama game. Yeah. But I think where Bama lost is when they was trying to do that shenanigans on the fourth down play. First they was going to punt it, then they tried to go for it. So then he called the timeout. They go for it and they get stopped.
That's a good point. That's when it started to come off the rails.
Yeah, that's when it was like in the rails. And I think with the end of the Sugar Bowl, what it was is I think they was doing a booth review while everybody was on the field at the end, and they tried to get everybody off. I think that's what the issue was.
Yeah, I would have to go back and look at that just to be more accurate on any kind of criticism of the officials.
Yeah, my last point I want to make, because like I said, my voice is shy. I agree with what you say about the SEC and non-conference. My issue is if you look back in the last few years, what has the SEC done in the postseason? That's why I keep saying the Big Ten is a better conference. I'm not saying the SEC is good. I'm just saying if you look at the postseason the last couple of years, especially in the CFP, what's the SEC's record been? But we can talk about that in another show next week.
All right, Michael. Thanks for being here.
All right, take care, Mark. Have a good. I hope 2026 is better than 2025 was for you.
Well, thank you so much. I appreciate that. Same to you. All right, super chats before our final call. And again, we are showing the Iowa merch, but pick out your favorite team. So we got Ohio State fans in the chat, Michigan, Notre Dame, Alabama, seeing all sorts of fans representing Indiana and other schools. So vocfb.com, combine your two favorite brands, your favorite team, and the voice of college football. All right, we've got the Elephant in the Room podcast. There it is. Hey, Mark. Sorry to have rambled, got nervous, and wanted discussion. Please interrupt me next time. Don't want you feeling you should have cut me off 25 minutes earlier. All right. Don't worry about that, Muley. Muley, you're a great caller. And yeah, we just basically needed graphic support for our conversation. Just too many records, too many teams, too many results versus other teams. Yeah, just not a good phone call from that standpoint, but all is good. Then we've got Kyle Poke 97 who says Oklahoma State will be in the CFP next year. Bet on it. Well, I will not be betting on it, but I guess you can take your $2 super chat and you can invest another $2 on Oklahoma State and probably get what, like plus 1,000, something like that. All right. Stereotypical Buck is here. Yes,
well,
sir.
Mark. Yeah, I'll try to keep this short for you, but I was making some comments earlier about some of the stuff the Real was saying. I've heard in the last couple of days, I think. But just his comments on the Big Ten, SEC, and again, I'll keep this under 5 minutes. But I'm Garrison's age. I'm in my early to mid 30s.
Yep.
My very first Ohio State football game I remember watching was like the 2003 bowl game versus Oklahoma State. And when I started getting into football, my introduction was the beginning of the SEC dominance, right? And that SEC dominance, it was, Ohio State getting destroyed in 2006, getting destroyed in 2007. The Big Ten as a whole was horrible in bowl games back then. Michigan fell apart. Penn State fell apart. And over the last few years, really 2017 was a really good bowl season. And in the last couple of years, we're starting to see the Big Ten really make a push forward. And basically, I've been hearing, my entire college football fandom is the Big Ten sucks. It's not as good as the SEC. The SEC is king. It's pushed narratives in the media nonstop by ESPN. Not saying they have a bias, but hey, they have a financial tie with the SEC, And now all of a sudden, that the switch has flipped a little bit. It's supposed to be that, oh no, it's the SEC is not bad. Like, no, the SEC is not bad. But the Big Ten right now, over the last few years, has been the better conference. And that's just it. And we can back it up with statistics. I think the worst conference right now is the ACC in the power. The ACC versus SEC record this year is 6-6. They're 6-6 versus the ACC. Big Ten versus SEC, 4-3.
Okay.
Big Ten currently has a 4-3 record versus the SEC. There's two Big Ten teams in the playoffs right now, and you're going to have a playoff, a final with a Big Ten team in it.
Okay.
So I don't know what this
all
is.
Right. We got your point. So, you just stated that the Big Ten is 4-3 against the SEC this season.
I believe so. That's what the stats I just looked up. Yes.
Okay.
That includes
right,
bowl
so
games.
Ohio State beat Texas, and Michigan lost to Oklahoma.
Texas
So
and
1-1 at that point, and then I'm sorry, Michigan lost to Oklahoma in the regular season.
Mhm.
Michigan lost to Texas. What are we? 1-2. Looking at the Big Ten, Iowa beat Vandy. That's 2-2. Illinois beat Tennessee. That's 3-2. And Indiana beat Bama. That's 4-2. Bama beat Wisconsin 4-3. I think that's your 4-3 right there. That's inconclusive.
Yeah, but it's a
doesn't
supporting
really,
factor, is it
doesn't
not?
really prove anything. That in and of itself does not. 4-3, and Illinois beat Tennessee on a walk-off field goal. So there's a one-play difference between the two in those games played. Now, the only thing I will say about a number of things that you stated is, yes, at the time that Ohio State was losing national championship games in 06 and 07, yeah, the Big Ten did take a beating in terms of national reputation. Some of that was deserved. Some of it was not, because we suffered then from the same thing we suffer now. People don't look at all the results. They don't do any kind of comprehensive research or review of the situation. They run based on like one big game or one narrative or one weekend. And yeah, the Big Ten disappointed in really Ohio State losing national championship games really hurt the Big Ten, when there were times when in 06 in particular, that the same day that Ohio State was losing, well, not the same day because the national championship game was separated than the rest, that the Big Ten's winning 2 games against the SEC on New Year's Day. Penn State's beating Tennessee and Arkansas is beating, or I'm sorry, Wisconsin's beating Arkansas. Things like that would happen. They would get ignored. So as is usual, there's a narrative built and people run with it that don't really do their own research or think for themselves. They just hear what they want to hear and run with it. So yeah, the SEC's been the best conference in college football, and it's not debatable. For years and years and years, I would rank the conferences and say this is no fun to do because we know what the result's going to be, that the SEC is the best conference, and I would love to be able to debate this. And finally, we got to a place about 2 years ago where we could finally start to debate it. Now, I would say that last year, I don't necessarily know that the Big Ten was the best conference or played better than the SEC. I'd have to go back and look at the numbers. I think more than anything, Ohio State made a playoff run that saved the Big Ten's rear end nationally, because I don't know that the conference really did anything outside of Ohio State. Who did Oregon beat outside the conference? Who did, we could go through the whole deal, and basically it was Ohio State holding up the flag for the Big Ten last year. Outside of Ohio State's results, the Big Ten was sub 500 against the other conferences. And in non-conference play this year, before postseason play, and again, everybody that jumps on me, I love how people take comments from 3 months ago and then they apply it to right now. Well, you can't apply it to right now because we've had more football games played in my comments from 3 months ago. So I'm making a comment based on what had transpired at that point, which was in September, the Big Ten was 6-8 against the other conferences, and the SEC was 10-4, and having actually played better teams. So at that point, the Big Ten or the SEC was a better conference based on better results in non-conference play. Well, now the Big Ten has played much better in bowl play and in the college football playoff. So I will reevaluate.
Okay, so you're saying it's inconclusive right now.
I'm sorry, what's that?
You're saying it's inconclusive that
I'm saying I haven't
done.
I haven't put all the records together. Off the top of my head, I would say that the Big Ten's probably better at this point, but I haven't put the records together. And then also, I don't like to just go with a record, because Alabama beating Wisconsin, to me, Should the SEC get credit for that? Well, of course, yeah, there was a game played and they should get some credit, but not as much as if Alabama played a like-seeded team in the Big Ten. If they had played Michigan, then that's different. Then they should get full credit. So I actually put together a system where I seed the teams in the conferences, match them all up, and weight the games based on the seed difference in those games, and do it like that. So I can't answer your question because I don't know what that current record is, but it just I shouldn't even use that word. My guesstimation is that the Big Ten has surpassed the SEC this season. And unless something goes terribly wrong, meaning Ole Miss, let's say maybe if they win the next 2 games and you still have a Big Ten team in the final. I don't know. It appears as though the Big Ten has surpassed the SEC this season. But for example, stereotypical, in 2023, Alabama loses a playoff game to Michigan. And the SEC, according to the Big Ten fan, and I understand the Big Ten fan perspective because I've been a Big Ten fan for 50 years. So I've rooted for the Big Ten to win all of its, I get up here and I'm as objective as possible, but I root for the Big Ten to win every game, every bowl game, and have since I was 8 years old. But when Alabama loses to Michigan at the Rose Bowl in 2023 by 1 play, to say, well, the SEC is garbage. They didn't win a playoff game this year. Okay. They had one team in the playoff that we don't even know was the best team in the conference, but they were the rep for the conference, and they lost in overtime by 1 play. That doesn't make them garbage. That means it's pretty inconclusive of what happened there. You got to credit the win. Michigan earned the win and the national championship, but in the process, they beat Nick Saban's worst team, arguably, by 1 play in overtime. That to me is not a conclusive conclusion. That is not a dominant situation for one conference or the other.
Well, Mark, as a Ohio State fan, I'd be willing to concede with DeReal that Michigan is indeed not the national championship winner of 2023. So I'll let him keep that one if he wants. And I'll let you get going. I know we're at the end of the night, so I'm going to let you get going. But I guess my main thing is, hey, that the times are changing. The Big Ten is the best conference right now, in my opinion. Obviously, you can make your own opinion about it, Mark. As we close out the season. But after listening to the narratives for 20 years, if I'm going to hear a bunch of excuses about how it's changing, I don't want to hear it. So have a happy New Year, Mark, and thanks for having my call.
Yeah, appreciate you being here. Okay. Tim, thank you so much for showing up. And Tim's been a member for 33 months. Good Lord. Thank you for that, Tim. Trojan Fight is saying, Mark, are you saying Alabama beating the 15th best Big Ten team in some way should be factored into the best conference? Yeah, that's what I am saying. Should it be a huge factor? No. Did you listen to what I said? You obviously didn't listen to what I said. Yes, should it be factored in? Yes, every game should be factored in to some degree. A little, a tiny bit, a lot. Yes, it should be factored in because Alabama could have lost the game. So it should be factored in. What if Alabama lost to Wisconsin? That shouldn't be factored in. I'm not saying that I'm rating the Big Ten or the SEC to be better than the Big Ten based on Alabama beating Wisconsin. Just please, I shouldn't even have brought any light to that comment. Okay. We've done enough damage tonight for sure. Appreciate you being here at the Voice of College Football and a playoff night. And we will march into next week. And, of course, the semifinals. Let's see. We got Miami and Ole Miss. Do we have any common opponents between those two? Florida comes to mind. Florida. And I guess that should be it for those two. So we will size up Ole Miss and Miami based on common opponents and national rankings if I get an opportunity. And then we've got, of course, Oregon and Indiana already played. But in addition to that game, of course, have multiple common opponents to size up. My Monday looks like we're going to be back here at 10 p.m. Eastern time. Oh man, it feels like Sunday for some reason. It's what? Thursday. It's New Year's Day. That's right. My last 24 hours have been a blur. I for the first time in really forever, I did not watch any football on New Year's Eve or New Year's Day until late. I watched all of Alabama and Ole Miss and Georgia. Anyway, we got our show tomorrow night, Friday night. That's what we got. Friday night, 10 p.m. Eastern time. We'll see you then.